Welcome to another episode of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Daniel Weaver, joined by our forecaster right next to me, Brendan Pham. And Brendan, we've had quite a bit of rain, over 12 days of rain. Are we going to see some dry weather this weekend?
We are going to see some dry weather. And you know what? This rain, we've actually really needed it because we've been stuck in a drought pattern for quite a long time and through the beginning of September. But I have more on what's coming up in the next pattern change in just a few minutes.
All right, we'll get to that soon. But for now, we'll set it off to nature in the news.
A study made by researchers from the University of Arizona has discovered that extreme heat affects people's daily routines and travel patterns. High heat resulted in people to stay indoors more often in air-conditioned rooms. Data from the study showed a decrease in leisure activities such as shopping and social events. The study also found that people didn't travel if there was no obligation to. Those who did have to travel, though, were more likely to do so by car, instead of by foot, cycling, or by public transport. This presents challenges towards cities that are attempting to promote more sustainable ways to travel. However, new policies are starting to develop to help combat this issue. Greener spaces are being constructed, and heat days where employees are not required to commute into work are starting to become a reality. Even though extreme heat is becoming an increasing issue, new innovative methods to combat this issue are starting to roll out, and policymakers are starting to take action to help lead on a larger scale.
Just a little less than 6 months since the last solar eclipse across North America, another solar eclipse was being launched on the Earth, except this time, the eclipse on October 2nd was over the other American continent on the other side of the world. But unlike the one back in April, this one is an annual solar eclipse. This is just like a total solar eclipse, except the moon is too far away from the Earth to completely block out the sun. This leaves what is called a ring of fire around the moon. Because the sun will never be completely covered by the moon, if you are watching the eclipse, solar eclipse glasses are a must for the whole duration. The eclipse began at around 11:43 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and lasted for about 5 hours. Despite this spectacular event, only a few thousand people will have the chance to witness it unless you're willing to make the 5,100-mile journey to Easter Island from State College.
With climate change, ice across lakes and other bodies of water are becoming less common, and the quality of ice is another feature that is starting to degrade. There are two types of ice, black ice and white ice. Black ice is clear and strong, while white ice is opaque and weaker due to the abundance of air bubbles inside. It has become inherently dangerous that much of the public is unaware of the changing thickness of the two different ice types. Black ice used to be the dominant thicker ice type in lakes and ponds across the northern US and in Canada. Now, thicker white ice is being observed, and the public is not aware that the same thickness of white ice will not support a human being on the surface. Most incidents are being found farther north on the globe, like in northern Canada, because that's where the climate is changing the quickest. Some communities near the Arctic are at risk of becoming completely cut off from the rest of the world because of weak ice road infrastructure. Although weaker ice types are becoming more common, proper education of communities, especially north of the United States, will ensure safe recreation and travel alternatives on those icy surfaces.
Hurricane Helene made landfall last Thursday, September 24th, as a major Category 4 hurricane, but her impacts were felt far from the coast. Helene formed just off of the Yucatan Peninsula at 11 a.m. on September 22nd. Helene then quickly strengthened into a major Category 4 hurricane just 2 days later. This is an increase in 90-mile-per-hour sustained winds in just over 48 hours. However, the winds were not the most devastating impact brought forth by Helene. Helene dumped over a foot of rain in many locations in North and South Carolinas, just east of the Smoky Mountains. The highest rainfall recorded was over 30 inches in Busick, North Carolina. Major flooding occurred in both the Carolinas, mainly east of the Smoky Mountains. Over 150 people have died so far from the hurricane, and hundreds are still reported missing. As the cleanup continues, the process of rebuilding the towns that were wiped off the map has begun.
We have a pattern change coming up, but first, there is a cold front that will be moving through starting this Friday. It's not going to be a ton of showers. There's not going to be a ton of showers around the region, and it's mainly going to be concentrated further north into New York. But that's because the cold front is quite weak in nature. Areas towards the south, I think we'll mainly see isolated showers at times, but the sun is going to be pretty dominant throughout much of the latter part of Friday. And as we head into Saturday, we're going to see even more sun with high pressure dominating in dry conditions. Look at this, sunny conditions as far west as the Great Lakes of Michigan. But back here, we have the cold front. It will be moving its way eastward off the Atlantic coast, leaving us with mainly dry conditions, and the humidity is going to drop a ton. Since we've had so much rain, it feels like we've been stuck in a little bit of a more muggier pattern, but this high pressure is really going to set up for beautiful conditions for our football game against UCLA. Now on Sunday, we have another cold front. Again, there are going to be showers around the region, but it's not going to be widespread. This cold front is going to be even weaker than the one we'll be seeing on Friday, as it's not going to have a lot of moisture to work with. So we're going to see showers, especially later in the day, and the high pressure system behind me is starting to move off the coast. In fact, you can barely see it on the map. Where the showers aren't going to be, it's going to be mainly sunny with mostly dry conditions and weak winds because of that high pressure system. So for Friday, we're going to see temperatures rising into the 70s and below 70s, which is actually above average for this time of year. Our average temperatures are sitting in the mid 60s, but again, we're going to see lots of sun, something we haven't seen in quite a long time. Through Friday night, temperatures are going to dip down into the low 50s, near the 50-degree mark, and the clouds will eventually start to clear out with the high pressure beginning to move in on Saturday. Again, temperatures very similar around the 72-degree mark, plentiful sunshine with high pressure in control and light winds. So again, that UCLA game is going to be fantastic in terms of weather. Potentially, we might need to bring the sunscreen since it's going to be so sunny at times. But again, it's going to be beautiful weather for that game. Now, Saturday night, look at our temperatures. Much lower, around 44 degrees. And that's going to be thanks to what we call radiational cooling. It allows the ground to cool down very, very fast. And on Sunday, we're going to see a little bit more shower activity again with the secondary cold front coming in. But that won't prove to be much of an issue leading into next week. Now I have a feature from Austin Long on ice crystal research.
Ever gaze up at a sky adorned with delicate wispy clouds and wonder about the artistry behind them? Those feathery formations aren't just fluff. They're a symphony of ice crystals orchestrating a dance high above us. Here at Penn State, one professor dedicates his work to uncovering the mystery of these crystals. Ice crystals are especially present in cirrus clouds. It's what they're made of. Crystals can actually be found throughout most clouds in our atmosphere, however. They're the key to understanding forecasting and climate change models. The aviation industry relies on what we know about ice crystals to better adapt against freezing and the potential dangers aircraft can have when interacting with ice crystals. The point is, ice crystals and their formation have many impacts that can affect the public.
We know that this actually has real impacts in systems like orographic systems, like, where snow is pushed up over a barrier like a mountain. So those kinds of forecasting questions, the work that we're doing impacts that. It also can impact things like, say, forecasting supercooled water in clouds, which is important for whether or not you have aircraft icing. So supercooled water is just liquid water that's below zero. But if that impacts the wing of an aircraft, it freezes. And if that builds up, well, the plane's in trouble.
It's tricky to understand the formation and life of ice crystals. We don't have direct access to view their creation and dissipation in the atmosphere directly. This creates a need for scientists to simulate the experience down here on the ground.
So the way we do it in the laboratory is we've got two ways we do it. One way is we launch a little tiny particle, which is the seed of an ice crystal, into a chamber. It has an electric charge, and then it gets levitated in the chamber, and so we can watch it grow. It's not supported by any kind of substrate or anything, so it grows kind of naturally like it might in a cloud. And then another way we grow crystals is we actually grow them off of a tip of a very, very fine capillary. And so they grow inside a chamber, and we can measure the growth rates of the crystals. That's what we do.
Ice crystals play a vital role in day-to-day weather, impacting precipitation amounts and locations. They are also crucial in understanding how clouds affect our climate.
There's various ways. We can start with climate change. So we know that climate models tend to be sensitive to the way ice is treated. I mean, there have been studies that show that if you have the crystal fall speeds wrong from cirrus, then the lifetimes of cirrus clouds tend to be too short maybe, or maybe too long. And then that affects the radiative budget of the planet that you calculate. It affects forecasts. If your crystals grow too quickly, fall out too quickly, well, your forecast of where the precipitation and how intense it's going to be is going to be wrong.
When researching, it's nice to come to some conclusions and see that there are answers to the questions being asked. Unfortunately, it's not so clear-cut when it comes to ice crystals. Some answers have presented themselves, but there's still more work to be done to uncover them all.
There's many things that are uncertain associated with the way ice crystals grow, particularly at low temperatures. We're focusing on the lower temperature clouds, things like that are typical of cirrus. We don't even really quite know at this point what really controls the growth of those crystals because there's been so few measurements. So we're trying to take the fundamental measurements that will allow us to understand better how it is that ice crystals grow the way that they do in these clouds.
Ice crystals are a somewhat clouded and complicated field to do research in, but there's optimism in discovering the correlation they have with forecasting and climate change. Understanding them better could perhaps help us in understanding the path our warming world is taking and make models better. So the next time you see a wispy cirrus cloud or a fluffy cumulus cloud, remember, there's an icy song and dance being played overhead, an orchestration filled with mysteries to still be uncovered. For Weather or Not, I'm student meteorologist Austin Long.
We have drier weather in store for next week, but first we have to get through the rain chances that will present themselves heading into this weekend. Here on Friday, we have a chance of some isolated showers, and that's because a cold front will be moving its way into the region, but it will be moisture starved, so that's why our shower chances aren't going to be totally widespread. Notice our temperatures still pretty stable throughout Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday, the reason why we see temperatures a little bit higher than what we normally see with a regular cold front is because the sun's going to come out, something we haven't seen in quite a long time. And so with the sun, the ground's going to be able to heat up very efficiently, and we're going to see temperatures rebounding into the 70s. But what's not going to be rebounding is low temperatures. Look at this, 44 degrees on Saturday. We're going to see a dip in those low temperatures, and on Sunday, another cold front moves in with more shower chances, potentially into the afternoon hours. But again, it's not going to be totally widespread because that secondary cold front is going to be pretty moisture starved. But heading into next week, drier conditions in store, but cooler weather. Notice our temperatures near average to below average at times, and on Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to see some chances of some rain showers. But overall, cooler temperatures are going to be in store with mostly dry conditions. But man, we've had such wet conditions through last week.
Yeah, and I don't want any more rain. Hard to believe we got some rain coming in next week, but that brings us to a weather whiz quiz question, which is, what was the longest stretch of consecutive days with rain in State College? Was it A, 11 days, B, 12 days, C, 13 days, or D, 14 days? And if you guessed D, 14 days, you would be correct. 14 days of rain. I mean, we've had 12 days of rain so far between these 2 weeks. Hard to believe what 2 more days of rain will look like. I'm so glad that we are finally seeing the sunshine. How about you? You got any plans this weekend?
I mean, I was actually planning to go to the beach. There will be some really good waves that are coming in from Hurricane Kirk, but man, I'm just glad that the rain is going to be out of here. We're going to see sunnier conditions, and it's going to be great for the UCLA game that's coming up.
Yeah, the one good thing about the rain, though, is that we desperately need it. Hope we'll get rid of those drought conditions, too. But anyway, that does it for this week's edition of Weather or Not. Don't forget to join us next week for a new episode.